Where the Heart Lies. Written by Ellie Dean. Read by Annie Aldington. The moral right of the author has been asserted. Chapter 1. 1941. Julie finished the washing up in the stone sink, tucked her short brown hair behind her ears, and helped her mother Flo stack the plates on the nearby shelf. Her few short hours at home were almost over, and she would soon be on duty again, rushing about on her bicycle to help deliver the babies, who always tended to arrive at the most inconvenient time of night. Being a midwife in Shoreditch and the surrounding districts was always challenging, and in the middle of a war, sometimes frightening. But ultimately it was very rewarding, and Julie couldn't imagine doing anything else. But these short visits home to Stepney were a blessing too, for they were a reminder of how lucky she was to have such a warm and loving family to always guide and support her. She finished putting the few bits of crockery away, and watched her mother bustle about, while her father, Bert, sprawled in his favourite sagging armchair by the small range. This cramped room, with bare floorboards and damp patches on the walls, was the heart of the two-up-two-down terraced house. It might be damp and rather ramshackle, but it was luxurious compared to the squalor of the nearby tenements. The tiny black range stood in the chimney breast, heating the room nicely as the wind buffeted outside. A scrub table was in the middle of the room, surrounded by a collection of wooden chairs and stools, and a dilapidated dresser stood against the wall, covered in photographs, cheap china ornaments, ration books and shopping lists. The wireless was a new and much-prized addition, and it stood proudly in a corner, the mahogany casing gleaming from Flo's industrious polishing. The heavily taped window above the ancient stone sink overlooked the tiny backyard, the outside lath, and the terraced houses beyond the crumbling brick wall. The front room had once been used as a bedroom when all the family were at home, but now Flo used it to eke out her wages by doing a bit of mending and dressmaking. Flo was an industrious little woman who could always find something to do. She was in her 50s, as skinny as a rake, and inclined to chatter about nothing much in particular, but her kitchen was always open to her neighbours. Her sense of humour rarely waned, and she had a terrific sense of fun. Her family adored her, and it was because of her that they'd had the self-belief to go out into the world and make something of themselves. But they always came home when they could, for this was where their hearts lay. Julie had been born 23 years ago in the big bed upstairs, as had all of Flo's 6 children. And although the war had been going on for more than a year now, and her eldest sister Eileen had long left home for the south coast, it still felt strange not to have everyone sitting round the table on a Saturday afternoon. Flo Harry seemed to read her daughter's thoughts as she adjusted the floral scarf she had knotted over the metal curlers in her greying brown hair. "It ain't the same without the 3 boys making their usual racket," she muttered, her brown eyes trawling the room. "God knows I moaned enough about it when they were here, but I'd give me eye teeth to hear 'em laughing and teasing and having meeting me out of house and home again." Bert Harris shifted in the creaking armchair, his braces dangling loosely from the waist of his heavy-duty trousers, his shirt sleeves rolled to his meaty elbows. "They'll get better rations than what we do, girl," he muttered round the stem of his pipe. "The army knows how to feed a man good and proper, never you mind." Julie and her mother exchanged a wise look. It had nothing to do with rations, but the longing to have things back to normal, to see the 3 boys home again, safe and well, and not to have to rely on heavily censored letters to get any news from them. "The rationing hasn't seemed to affect you that much, Dad," said Julie with a chuckle. "The buttons are still straining on that shirt." He grinned at her. "Less lip from you, my girl. I can't help it if I'm all muscle." "Muscle indeed," Flo snorted, swiping playfully at him with a scrap of tea towel. "It's the beer what makes them buttons pop." She turned to Julie. "Him and his mates drink gallons of the stuff down at the toolmaker's every night, but at least it fills him up so he don't notice how little there is on his plate when he comes home for his tea." She ran her hands over the faded wrap-round pinafore and gave it a tug. "I dread to think what would happen if that got rationed as well as everything else. A man needs a bit of pleasure after hard days."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?